At Arkan Academy, Ian Precus is just another third-year student in the swordsmanship department. His friend Celine Haster is in the second-year knights department, and another friend, Leto Einstern, is also a third year in swordsmanship. Like any normal students, their biggest worries are grades, exams, and daily academy life. To shake off the stress, Ian and Leto sometimes sneak in a little drink. After one such night of fun, Ian stumbles back to his room and falls asleep. That night, he has a strange dream. He is standing on a battlefield, surrounded by fallen enemies. In the middle of it all, he sees a figure that looks just like him. The figure warns him, Delpharem is coming, stop him. When Ian wakes up, the name Delpharem lingers in his mind. It sounds familiar, like something from an old legend, but he brushes it off as just a drunken dream. Then, he notices something odd, a letter sitting on his desk that wasn't there before. Stranger still, the date on his calendar has jumped ahead by 7 days. Confused, he picks up the letter and starts reading. The handwriting is elegant, clearly from a woman. Before even finishing, Ian imagines it might be from a secret admirer, but as he reads on, his excitement fades. The letter claims to be from someone named Sophia, written in the year 571 of the imperial calendar, on the 15th day of the month of the bow, but those dates don't match any modern records. The final words sent a chill down his spine. If we don't protect the future, the world will perish. Annoyed, Ian crumples the letter and throws it away, assuming it's some kind of prank. But as he walks through the academy halls, something feels off. Students whisper behind his back. They keep their distance, looking at him like he's diseased. That's when he notices something even stranger. He's carrying an axe. Spotting his friends Leto and Selene, Ian calls out to them, but instead of greeting him, they freeze and turn away. When he tries to get their attention, Leto stares at him, eyes wide with shock. "Something about you was different yesterday," Leto murmurs. Ian, completely lost, demands an explanation. Finally, Selene speaks up. "You've been possessed for an entire week." Ian feels his stomach drop. As far as he remembers, he just said goodbye to them last night. How could 7 days have passed? Selene and Leto look frustrated. Apparently, while possessed, Ian treated them like servants and ruined his reputation. If that wasn't bad enough, they had even considered calling an exorcist, until he threatened them with the axe he's still holding. Ian grips the weapon tightly, more confused than ever. His friends flinch as if they've seen him do something terrifying with it before. The weight of everything hits him at once. How was he possessed? He wasn't near any cursed objects or dangerous places. Then, a thought creeps into his mind. Could it be connected to that battlefield dream? One thing is clear. Whatever took control of him is gone now, and before he can figure out what really happened, he'll have to deal with the mess his possessed self left behind. After hearing the news, Ian is left wondering what terrible thing he could have done. The answer is clear. His actions were beyond reckless. In fact, they were so shocking that he might not even be ready to accept them. Somehow, he had managed to defeat the strongest student of the second years. The reality sinks in. Ian had bested Saria Jordana, the youngest aura expert and the feared monster swordswoman of the academy. The thought alone is difficult to believe. The memory of the battle remains blurry, making it even harder for him to comprehend how he achieved such a feat. As if simply winning wasn't enough, Selene explains that the way he defeated her was so brutal that she was left hospitalized for an entire week. The more he thinks about it, the more he questions what kind of force took over his body to make such a thing possible. No one has an answer. However, dwelling on the past is pointless now. What matters is the present. There is something far more concerning ahead, his swordsmanship class. Today, he has to face Saria once again. The memory of their last fight resurfaces. In that moment, Saria had struggled desperately against him, unable to keep up. His piercing glare alone was enough to make her falter. When he struck, it sent her flying backward. Blow after blow landed without mercy, shocking the watching students. For as long as they could remember, Saria had never lost a battle. Even fourth-year students found her difficult to defeat, yet Ian, without any effort, had torn through her defenses as if she were nothing. The possessed version of Ian had stood over her, his presence overwhelming. It was almost laughable to him how easily she fell into his traps. He had purposely left openings, expecting her to be cautious, yet she charged straight into them without hesitation. She didn't even question the obvious bait he had set. Back in the present, the weight of the upcoming rematch hangs over Ian like a dark cloud. Of all people, why does he have to face her again? If it were anyone else, he might have stood a chance, but Saria Jordana is not just anyone. She is the Academy's strongest fighter. The thought of stepping into the ring with her again is enough to make him want to walk away. Celine even suggests that giving up now might be his best option. Meanwhile, the students rally behind Saria, urging her to reclaim her pride. Her loss had been humiliating, and she is determined not to let it happen again. Normally, the instructors favor her, allowing her to maintain her status without much challenge. However, this time, all eyes are on her, and the pressure is suffocating. She cannot afford to lose again. Before the match begins, the professor issues a final reminder. This battle will count toward their grades. Ian immediately regrets everything. Losing was already inevitable, but now, failing could have even worse consequences. Unlike Saria, whose reputation could withstand a small setback, he cannot afford to fail. The idea of being forced to return home, jobless and aimless, is terrifying. The match begins, and Saria wastes no time. She strikes with incredible speed, landing a single hit that sends Ian flying. He crashes to the ground with a painful thud. One attack is all it takes for him to realize the truth. He is completely outmatched. Even if he tries to hold his ground, the outcome is obvious. A trip to the hospital is inevitable. Yet, surrendering would only make things worse. Saria would never accept a victory without a real fight. She would demand another match, refusing to let him escape so easily. Forcing himself to stand, Ian pushes forward. As he leaps into the air to strike, he notices something strange. His body feels lighter, his movements more refined. There is a precision he has never experienced before. The question lingers in his mind. What exactly happened to him when he was possessed? As the battle rages on, Saria spots an opening in Ian's defense and swiftly knocks his sword out of his hands before he can strike. For a brief moment, Ian had believed he might actually have a chance after sensing the strange boost in his strength. But reality proves otherwise. It was nothing more than wishful thinking. Meanwhile, Saria wonders if that weak point in his defense was deliberate. Last week, he had effortlessly tossed her aside as if she was a mere practice dummy. During their last encounter, Ian had left openings on purpose, almost as if he were playing with her. The thought alone frustrates Saria. She had become the subject of ridicule because of him, and now he's acting as if their battle is insignificant. Fueled by irritation, she launches another powerful strike. This time, Ian is ready. He quickly blocks the attack, noticing how much sharper his reflexes have become. His reaction speed and kinetic vision are far better than before. At this rate, it wouldn't be unreasonable to believe he can keep up with her in this match. The battle intensifies as Ian gradually adapts to her attacks, meeting her strikes head-on. However, her relentless assault is beginning to wear him down. Saria, on the other hand, keeps recalling what Ian had told her last week. Never rush in just because an opening appears. Assume it's a trap. That very lesson is why she demanded this duel in the first place. But now, watching Ian's performance, she starts to feel like he isn't even taking this fight seriously. Determined to prove herself, she charges in again, unwilling to stop until Ian fights her with everything he has. Realizing there's no avoiding it, Ian finally decides to stop holding back. His power has clearly increased, and now he's confident he can defeat her. However, Saria's movements are strangely exaggerated. It's clear that possessed Ian's words have gotten to her. She's overthinking every move, hesitating when she normally wouldn't. Their fight continues until Ian decides he's had enough. To him, he's proven his strength and sees no reason to continue. But Saria is far from satisfied. The glimpse of power Ian has shown only fuels her determination even more. Now that he's serious, she wants to push herself to match him. Without hesitation, she leaps into the air and crashes down with a devastating strike, landing a direct hit. Ian collapses onto the ground as the teacher begins the countdown. If he fails to stand before it finishes, he will lose. But Saria is furious. She realizes he let that attack land on purpose just to end the fight. She refuses to accept such an outcome. If Ian dares to walk away like this, she will challenge him again. If he skips class, she'll keep pursuing him. This won't end until he experiences the same humiliation she did. Meanwhile, Ian is just annoyed by the whole situation. He doesn't even remember what he did to her last week, yet she treats him like some lifelong rival. It all seems ridiculous. However, he manages to get up before the countdown reaches 0. The teacher offers him a chance to withdraw, but Ian refuses. The fight must continue. Saria is pleased. This is the right choice. It wouldn't feel right to leave things unresolved. Ian, however, smirks, feeling a sudden surge of excitement. If this is what she wants, then he'll make sure to break that stubborn pride of hers, just like last time. As soon as the battle resumes, Saria makes the first move, but Ian counters with unexpected ease. Before she can react, he catches her sword with his bare hands and tosses it aside. Raising his own weapon, he prepares to end the fight. But then, something makes him hesitate. Saria is trembling, her guard completely down. In that moment, Ian realizes that no matter how many times he defeats her, nothing will change. This isn't about victory. It's about understanding why they're even fighting. Instead of striking, he simply flicks her forehead, ending the match in the most unexpected way possible. Saria misinterprets Ian's actions, thinking he is trying to mock her after his victory. Meanwhile, Ian wonders why she is so desperate to win. For her, winning is everything. Losing means becoming a joke in front of everyone. But Ian tries to make her see things differently. What others think doesn't define her skills. One loss won't erase the effort she's put into her training. People's opinions change quickly, but the strength she's gained through hard work remains. He understands how painful it is to be ridiculed after defeat. He has lived with the weight of failure for a long time, so he knows that dwelling on others' judgment is pointless. A single loss doesn't change a person's worth. Even if people laugh at her now, nothing truly changes. Saria reflects on his words. She had doubted her own abilities after losing to him before, believing that her swordsmanship was meaningless. But this battle has given her a new perspective. She realizes that there is more to strength than just winning. For the first time, she feels grateful to Ian. The crowd is stunned. They never expected Saria to admit defeat, especially to someone like Ian. This marks his second victory against one of the Academy's top students. The teacher officially announces him as the winner. Despite losing, Saria feels inspired. Ian's words have given her the motivation to carve her own path without worrying about others' opinions. She no longer wants to be trapped by the expectations of those around her. A few days later, Ian once again finds himself the center of attention. The Academy is buzzing with whispers about him. Students now see him as a monster. Not only did he defeat Saria, but he also made her surrender. Ian, however, doesn't feel like he truly earned this victory. He believes she wasn't fighting at her full strength. While it's true that his aura detection and mana have improved significantly over the past week, he still doesn't understand what caused this sudden change. There's a gap in his memory, and he wants to know what happened. His friends gather around him, concerned about his well-being. He reassures them that he's fine, but he can't shake the unease about what happened to him. They remind him that the saintess at the cathedral confirmed he was all right. But Ian isn't convinced. With all the strange rumors spreading, he can't help but feel uneasy. Celine, however, doesn't think he should waste time worrying about the gossip. In fact, the rumors aren't even bad. Before all this, people looked down on him as a weak noble. But that's no longer the case. She was always annoyed when others dismissed him as insignificant. Now, thanks to his unexpected rise, even the high-ranking nobles have stopped looking down on them. Some are even afraid that Ian might crush them next. Selene then brings up another rumor. Apparently, Syria has been following Ian around ever since their battle. Ian glances to the side and immediately spots her. She is lurking behind a tree, dressed in a disguise so obvious that it barely qualifies as one. Selene is completely thrown off by how ridiculous it looks. Syria stands there with full confidence, as if she actually believes she's blending in. Ian can't help but wonder, why is she following him after getting defeated twice? For nearly 5 days, Syria has been lurking around Ian, and he isn't sure how to handle the situation. His friends notice her persistence and suggest that he talk to her, as she seems desperate to speak with him. Eventually, Ian decides to confront her. He acknowledges that he's aware of her following him and asks if there's something she wants to say. Syria, looking unusually reserved and nervous, is startled that Ian saw through her disguise so easily. Despite her embarrassment, she quickly gathers herself and asks for his guidance in becoming stronger. Ian immediately notices a shift in her attitude. She has been far more polite since their last duel. However, he doesn't understand what he could possibly teach someone who is already stronger than him. If she's looking for moral lessons, that's a different matter, but when it comes to actual skill, he doesn't believe he has anything valuable to offer. Besides, he is relieved to have his normal routine back and doesn't want to get involved in her training. In the end, he turns her down, though he reminds her that she is already powerful enough. His victories against her were not due to superior skill, but because she let her guard down. If anything, luck played a huge role in his wins. However, Syria believes that luck is just another form of skill. She insists once more, saying she doesn't need long-term guidance, just enough help until the upcoming hunting festival. The mention of the festival catches Ian off guard, as it reminds him of a strange letter he received, which also mentioned the event. That year, the festival was marred by several incidents. One particularly gruesome case involved Emma from the alchemy department, who was gathering medicinal herbs when she was attacked by a mysterious creature. She was later found with severe injuries, her stomach torn open. Realizing the importance of this connection, Ian shifts his focus to the bigger issue. Before leaving, he advises Syria to seek guidance from Professor Derek if she truly wants to improve. Without explaining, Ian abruptly rushes off. His friends, confused by his sudden departure, ask where he is going. He vaguely responds that he just remembered something urgent. Although he doesn't fully trust the contents of the letter, the fact that his friends' names were mentioned in it unsettles him. Later, he tracks down Emma in the alchemy lab. He is certain she holds some answers regarding his situation. A few days pass, and Syria begins training under Professor Derek's guidance. He observes her progress and praises the fluidity of her movements. If she continues at this pace, she will be able to refine her aura by the time of the hunting festival. He is also surprised that she reached out for help, as it's something he rarely sees from her. Syria eagerly shares that it was Ian who suggested she train under him, and she has no regrets about following his advice. However, she soon concludes that she has learned everything Derek has to offer and decides to leave. Her bluntness catches the professor off guard, and he can't help but notice her complete lack of social awareness. Before she leaves, Derek reassures her that she doesn't need to rush. He is confident that she will outperform most of the competition with ease. As a first-time participant in the hunting festival, he also gives her a valuable tip, familiarizing herself with the terrain and creatures of the southern forest, where the event will take place. Her upperclassmen have likely already begun preparing. Curious, she asks whether stronger monsters exist in the southern forest. Derek confirms that the entrance is relatively safe, but as she moves deeper in, the creatures become significantly more powerful. Hearing this, Syria decides she will explore further next time. However, Derek warns her not to go too deep alone. While most students can handle the usual monsters, records show that far more dangerous creatures tend to appear as the hunting festival approaches. From there, the story shifts to the origins of the gods. At the dawn of creation, two powerful beings emerged. The heavenly god, Ars, was born alongside light, while darkness brought forth the evil god, Omelos. Together, Ours and the flow of time shaped the universe, establishing an unbreakable rule. Time must always move forward. If this law were ever broken, chaos would consume the world. To prevent this, ours placed strict limits on time, ensuring its order remained intact. Only a being of immense power could ever challenge this rule, someone like Dilam, an enemy of the heavenly god. Meanwhile, Emma struggles to explain this ancient law to Ian, who barely understands a word of it. She's frustrated, especially since he was the one who disturbed her after she pulled an all-nighter, demanding an explanation. Even worse, after not seeing her for a month, he barged in without warning. She feels like he only comes to her when he needs something, while he insists that they are friends. Regardless, he apologizes and asks her to simplify the story. Emma relents and summarizes the key point. Defying time requires overwhelming strength, and only one being has that kind of power: Dilam, the servant of the evil god. Ian immediately connects this to a mysterious letter he received, suspecting it might have come from Dilam. Emma isn't convinced. The existence of Dilam is uncertain, let alone the idea that such a being could send a letter. Ian then wonders if Omelos himself could be involved, but since there's no proof, Emma dismisses the idea. She advises him to keep the letter a secret to avoid being ridiculed. As Ian prepares to leave, Emma hands him 2 potions she recently invented. They are presence-suppressing drugs, and she encourages him to test them. Excited by the idea, Ian imagines turning completely invisible, only for Emma to clarify that the potion won't make him disappear, it simply hides his presence. Eager to try it, Ian drinks one, only to gag at the horrible taste. Emma scolds him for wasting such a valuable item without thinking. Despite the awful taste, Ian tests the potion's effect. He asks Emma to close her eyes and try to sense him while he hides. To his surprise, he can't even feel his own presence, as if he has become a ghost. Thinking he now has the perfect advantage for the upcoming hunting festival, he feels confident until Emma immediately pinpoints his location. His excitement vanishes when she explains that, while the potion worked, his body odor gave him away. It hadn't occurred to her during testing that scent could betray someone's presence. Ian then decides to leave, promising to test the second potion in the forest and report back. Before he goes, he warns Emma to avoid the forest until after the hunting festival, as the monsters there have been acting strangely. Seeing an opportunity, Emma takes advantage of Ian's willingness and invites him to accompany her whenever she needs materials. He agrees without hesitation. Later that night, Ian returns to his dormitory, still troubled by the ominous letters predicting Emma's death. He wants to warn her properly and hopes she takes his concerns seriously. Suddenly, Leto bursts into the room, furious that Ian abandoned their friends without any explanation. Ian immediately suspects Leto of planting the strange letters as a prank and demands answers. However, Leto is confused and has no idea what Ian is talking about. The topic shifts, and Leto asks about Emma's well-being. Ian reassures him that she's fine. Emma was found at the edge of the forest, severely wounded. The scouts believed a monster had attacked her, an unusual event in that area. It seemed she had let her guard down, but drinking a special potion that made her appear dead had saved her life. Still, Ian was convinced that the Saintess's divine power was what truly kept Emma alive. However, the Saintess admitted that her abilities had limits. A miracle could be performed, but it required a rare offering. It was not about money, but the difficulty of obtaining it. Unfortunately, she warned them to prepare for the worst. Emma's father was already on his way, desperate to see his daughter. The Saintess offered to explain the situation to him, allowing Ian to return to the academy, but Ian refused. He had been the last person to see Emma before the attack, and he felt responsible for telling her father the truth. The weight of guilt was heavy on Ian, but the Saintess reassured him that he was not to blame. Meanwhile, outside the infirmary, Leto was furious. Monsters did not usually appear near the forest's entrance, and if this had not happened, Emma would be fine. Before they could dwell on it further, Emma's father arrived. His face was streaked with tears, and his appearance was unkempt, as if he had rushed there without care. Seeing Ian, he pleaded to see his daughter, but even he was not allowed inside for safety reasons. Ian and Leto could only promise him that the priests were doing all they could. Ian took out the potion bottle Emma had given him, offering it to her father. It felt right for him to have it, but the man refused, asking only one thing: to save his daughter. The simplicity of the request crushed Ian with guilt. He had ignored the warning in the letter, but if he had taken it seriously, maybe this could have been prevented. He no longer knew if the letter was truly from the future, but he could no longer brush it aside. Determined, he decided to track down Sepia, the person who had sent it, and ensure that its grim predictions never became reality. The next day, Ian embarrassed himself by asking Leto about a girl named Sepia. Instead of answering, Leto burst into laughter, teasing him about having a secret admirer. The idea that someone would be interested in Ian was too ridiculous for him. Ian, unfazed, insisted he just needed to ask her some questions, but Leto continued to joke until Ian finally shut him up with a well-placed punch. Once the teasing stopped, Leto pointed out that Sepia was also the name of a flower. Since flower names were common in the north, the sender might be from that region. This reminded Ian of the Yordina family, and Leto agreed, mentioning that he had a person in mind: Syria Yordina, a girl who happened to be a fan of Ian. Before Ian could process this, Syria suddenly appeared, handing him a pouch of gold. She called it payment for teaching her, though Ian had no idea what she was talking about. She reminded him that she had once asked for his guidance and later realized it was rude not to offer something in return. Ian insisted it was unnecessary and refused such a large reward. Still, he was curious. Why was she so desperate to train with him? Syria explained that she wanted to learn from the one person she had never been able to defeat. But Ian doubted he had anything to teach someone as skilled as her. She had the potential to improve on her own. Syria acknowledged this, but didn't want to miss the upcoming hunting festival, as it was her last chance to participate. Hearing this, Ian suddenly remembered something important. The letter had mentioned that Sepia was also a participant in this year's hunting festival. If Syria was Sepia, this event would confirm it. With that in mind, Ian finally agreed to train with her. He still hadn't figured out if she was truly Sepia, but he had learned one thing. Sepia had no social skills. She was known as Rude Yordina, though it wasn't because she was intentionally mean. She simply didn't know how to interact with others. Syria had no understanding of rest. Ian had heard that high-ranking nobles trained without stopping, relying on healing potions to recover, and she was no exception. Even when Ian suffered a painful bruise, she insisted they continue, believing a single potion would fix everything. However, Ian knew that while potions could heal wounds, they didn't relieve muscle fatigue or tension. This was why people took breaks during training. Curious about her determination, Ian wondered why she was pushing herself so hard. Syria finally admitted that there was someone in their 4th year she desperately wanted to defeat before they graduated. If she missed this chance, she would likely never get another. Ian figured she could always challenge them later, but Syria knew it wasn't that simple. In her family, anyone who dared to challenge the head was immediately cast out. The 4th-year student she wanted to defeat was none other than her half-sister, Delphine Yordina, the future head of their family. This meant the academy was the only place where she, a member of a lesser bloodline, could fight Delphine on equal terms. Once her sister graduated, that opportunity would be lost forever. The memory of her defeat was still fresh. Delphine had changed the rules, twisting them to secure her victory. Even though Syria had fought alone without any allies, her sister had looked down on her, unfazed. Delphine had the full support of the Yordina family, while Syria stood alone, and that had ultimately led to her loss. As Ian listened, his quiet understanding made Syria wonder if she had finally found someone willing to stand by her side. For the first time, she considered the idea of asking him for help. Time moved forward, bringing the highly anticipated hunting festival, a grand event cherished by Emperor Aedelus. It was one of the most prestigious competitions in the academy, meant to determine the best hunter, the one capable of taking down the strongest magical beasts. These creatures roamed freely in the southern forest, specifically kept there for this challenge. The festival held another layer of mystery for Ian. According to the letters, Sepia, the unknown messenger, was supposed to participate. Additionally, Syria was somehow tied to him, with their connection meant to deepen during the event. He still didn't understand why he was at the center of all this, but the thought left him restless. Just as he was lost in thought, Celine rushed up to him, insisting they go together. Without warning, she called him an idiot, convinced he wouldn't want to team up with Syria after their earlier conflict. Even when Ian assured her they had reconciled, she still found it odd that Syria had been following him for the past few days. Ian dismissed it as mere curiosity, especially since Syria had since stopped. Celine, however, found the whole thing frustrating. She couldn't understand why Ian was going out of his way for Syria. Annoyed by her complaints, Ian suddenly grabbed her face, squeezing her cheeks like a chef handling dough. She was left speechless, completely caught off guard. Before she could react, Ian casually asked if she had changed her perfume. Flustered, she admitted it was just the scent of her facial cleanser. Of course, Ian didn't actually care. He had only asked to change the subject. Classic distraction tactics. Selene was curious about what kind of exercises they would be doing. Ian figured it would mostly involve exploring the forest, and he was hoping they wouldn't run into any magical beasts. Normally, that would be the case, but according to the letter, an attack was bound to happen. If he reacted the right way, he could prevent a disaster. That meant if he failed, people could die. He was determined not to let that happen. As the only one aware of the warning, it was up to him to change the outcome. Before the event started, the instructor gathered the students for an important announcement. He informed them that Emma had been injured in the forest and was now in the hospital. It was strange, since magical beasts had never been seen so close to the entrance before. He warned them to stay alert. There was more bad news. Since most of them were melee fighters, fighting in a dense forest would be a challenge. Trees would make it harder to swing their swords properly, while the monsters they faced would have the advantage of being in their natural habitat. Ian knew this would put them at a serious disadvantage. However, the instructor reassured them that any swordsman skilled enough to manifest their aura could cut through anything, even in difficult terrain. To prove his point, he demonstrated how a strong blade could clear the forest effortlessly. That didn't mean they could just slash recklessly, though. The environment would play a key role in battle, and maintaining the right distance was crucial. For their first exercise, the students were paired up and told to explore freely. The instructor warned them not to go too deep into the forest. If they felt threatened, they should retreat immediately. But Ian knew what was coming. A large group of magical beasts would ambush them, and the best way to survive would be to stick together. The problem was that the event was designed for pairs, making it impossible to convince everyone to stay in a large group. No one would believe him anyway. His best option was to warn the professor as soon as the monsters appeared. But there was a chance he'd be caught in the battle himself. With that in mind, he ignored Celine's invitation and rushed past her, asking Syria to team up instead. Selene was left frozen in shock, completely crushed by his decision. The exploration began, and for now, Ian and Syria stayed within the safe zone. No magical beasts had appeared yet, which felt strange. Even Syria, who had a better sense for these things, found it unusual. Ian suggested they take a break, but reminded her to stay alert. As the sun began to set, she stood in front of him, looking hesitant, as if she had something on her mind. She had been wondering why he chose her as his partner. Ian's response was simple: because they were friends. But Syria wasn't used to having friends, and didn't know how it worked. She even offered him gold in return, thinking she needed to give him something in exchange. Ian explained that friendship wasn't a business deal. Friends talked, shared things, and supported each other without expecting payment. Realizing this, Syria decided to ask him something bold. She wondered if he was doing all this because of Emma. They had gone deep into the forest, and she suspected he was seeking revenge for what had happened to her. Ian didn't answer right away. Instead, anger surged through him, his body trembling at the memories of his dear friend. He wasn't here for revenge. He was here to find the magical beasts before they could attack. Syria was horrified. Was this also part of what friendship meant? Ian thought it was only natural. He then wondered how she would react if he were the one in danger. Without hesitation, Syria declared that she would fight to protect him. That was exactly how he felt now. Syria, who had always been alone, was slowly beginning to understand what it meant to have a friend. Ian reassured her that he wasn't acting recklessly. He had a plan, and their safety was his priority. Then he heard something. He told Syria to focus. At first, she sensed nothing, but then she felt it. A sinister presence watching them. Nearly a dozen magical beasts lurked in the shadows, their eyes glowing ominously. If they didn't act fast, the other students would be in serious danger. Syria reached for her blade, ready to fight, but Ian advised against it. Taking on this many creatures head-on was a bad idea. Their best chance was to warn the professor. Without wasting time, they ran. The monsters were right behind them, closing the distance fast. Ian was confident they could make it. The professor wasn't too far, and they had a decent lead. But then, the worst happened. Syria stumbled, twisting her ankle. She insisted she could keep going, even offering to stay behind. But Ian wasn't leaving her behind. The creatures were getting closer. They had only moments left. Ian ordered Syria to run, a ridiculous instruction given how much trouble she had already caused him. He needed her to keep the truth from her friends while he stayed behind to deal with the threat. As she fled, Ian dashed forward, prepared to confront the monsters on his own. The silence in the forest confirmed his fears. The nearby animals had already gone into hiding, sensing danger. Taking advantage of the moment, Ian planned his ambush. He uncorked the presence-erasing vial and drank the foul liquid, suppressing his existence from the creature's senses. However, his scent remained a problem. To counter this, he covered himself in soil and grass, blending into the environment. With his scent masked, Ian located a good hiding spot and climbed onto a sturdy tree branch, waiting for the right moment. A wolf-like creature emerged from the shadows, its energy stronger than an adult man's. This was no ordinary beast. It was a true demonic entity. The creature appeared confused, its nose sniffing the air for the scent it had just followed. That was Ian's chance. He lunged from the branch, blade in hand, aiming for the creature's head. His aura, however, was too weak to pierce through completely. Determined, Ian threw his full weight into the attack, forcing the blade deeper. The monster struggled, but he refused to let go until his sword finally broke through the skull. His first kill was complete. But if just one was this difficult, he wondered how many more he could take down alone. There was no time for doubt. He had to protect Syria at all costs. More beasts lurked nearby, searching for him. At least 5 were within range. The only strategy was to kill them before they could alert the rest of the pack. Moving swiftly, Ian struck down multiple wolves, each attack precise and relentless. Amidst the battle, one of them managed to bite into his arm, sharp fangs sinking deep. Pain flared through his body, but he bit down the scream, knowing that making noise would bring more enemies. With sheer force, he drove his axe into the creature, silencing it for good. His body ached, but his movements felt sharper than before. Ever since the spirit possessed him, his speed and reflexes had grown unnaturally strong. He wasn't sure what the spirit wanted, but at least it had made him stronger. Right now, that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, back with the group, Selene fumed over Ian's decision to pair up with Syria instead of her. She even accused them of being more than just partners. Before the argument could escalate, Syria returned, breathless and panicked, explaining everything that had happened. Instructor Derek's expression darkened upon hearing that Ian had stayed behind alone. Without hesitation, he rushed into the forest. Overwhelmed with exhaustion, Syria collapsed, praying that Ian would survive. Back in the forest, Ian lay hidden among the corpses of the fallen beasts. Another monster approached, sniffing at its dead companions. As soon as it lowered its guard, Ian struck fast, slicing its neck in one clean motion. The creature fell instantly, but fatigue was catching up with him. More beasts arrived, and this time he had no traps or tricks left. Blood coated his body, both his own and that of the monsters he had slain. Despite the exhaustion, his golden eyes gleamed with determination. He wasn't backing down. Raising his axe, he welcomed the next fight. The two wolves lunged at him together, faster than any he had faced before. But Ian had learned their patterns. Instead of retreating, he charged forward, unleashing a powerful cross-slash that struck both enemies at once. With precise, ruthless strikes, he finished them off. Another victory. But Ian wasn't done yet. He vowed to kill every last one of these monsters, no matter what it took. Ian's body is worn down, but he knows most of the creatures have been dealt with. Still, he senses one more nearby. Unlike the others, this one isn't rushing toward him. Instead, it lingers, waiting. Ian realizes it might be setting a trap. A clever opponent, but he isn't about to play into its hands. A sharp, unpleasant smell catches his attention. It's familiar. Too familiar. The scent of alchemy, something from his classroom. No, not just any potion. It's from Emma's workshop. His grip tightens on his blade as a realization hits him. This beast isn't just another monster. It's the one responsible for attacking Emma. A piece of her robe is still caught in its fangs. The monster drops the fabric onto Ian's blade as if mocking him. It circles him confidently, fully aware of its strength. Ian understands the situation. This isn't an ordinary beast. It's a high-ranking predator, and one wrong move could end him. He has to be careful. Before he can act, the beast launches itself at him, slamming into his body with incredible force and knocking him backward. Its speed is overwhelming. It charges again, but Ian reacts just in time, shoving his blade into its open mouth. The wolf recoils, but Ian knows that's not enough. Seizing the moment, he swings his axe with full force, but the creature's thick hide deflects the blow, sending the weapon flying out of his hands. The beast recovers quickly, barely scratched. Ian watches as it gracefully lands, its movements almost effortless. Despite the hit, it remains confident, unfazed. However, he notices something. His attack shattered a few of its teeth. That means biting won't be its main weapon anymore, but that doesn't make it any less dangerous. The creature lunges again, swiping with its claws. Ian barely dodges, but he's running out of stamina. His body is slower, weaker. He needs to end this now, but how? Every attack so far has barely done anything. The beast, sensing its advantage, fires a powerful energy blast, slamming Ian against a tree. His vision blurs. The monster moves in for the final blow, claws ready to tear through him. Ian knows he has only one chance. He remembers how the beast treated Emma, not as a threat, but as a toy. It didn't kill her instantly, it played with its prey. That arrogance would be its downfall. As the monster strikes, it looks like Ian has been torn apart, but instead, he anticipated the move and angled his blade perfectly. The moment the beast came close, he drove his weapon straight into its gut, aiming for the weakest spot. The monster's confidence turns to shock. Ian doesn't stop. Fueled by rage, he cuts deeper, ensuring the beast feels every bit of pain it inflicted on Emma. The once proud creature collapses, its body torn open. It made the mistake of underestimating him. Now, it pays the price. With one final strike, Ian ends it, dedicating the kill to Emma. The battle is over, but his anger lingers. He hopes the monster felt even a fraction of the suffering it caused before it took its last breath. Instructor Derek moves swiftly through the dense forest, his focus locked on finding Ian. He hopes the young warrior is still in one piece. When he finally arrives at the scene, he is met with a gruesome sight. Lifeless bodies of magical beasts scattered across the ground. The air is thick with the scent of battle, and Ian's presence lingers nearby. The rest of the students, including Celine, soon catch up, their eyes scanning the area for any sign of him. Despite the carnage left behind, Ian is nowhere to be seen, adding to their growing concern. Derek, relying on his instincts, leads them further down the path. Eventually they find him, sitting against the corpse of a massive wolf, struggling to catch his breath. His exhaustion is evident, and before anyone can say a word, his strength gives out and he collapses. barely managing to call out for his instructor. The next thing Ian remembers is waking up inside a temple. A saintess watches over him, explaining that Derek had carried him back after his brutal fight. His wounds are healing, but full recovery will take some time. Though he succeeded in avenging Emma, the victory feels hollow. She still remains in a coma. Worse yet, the beast he fought was still young. A fully matured one would have never given him a chance. His peace is quickly interrupted by a friend, who wastes no time calling him reckless. Ian, still groggy, has no patience for lectures, but the argument continues. His friend points out a better strategy. If Ian had given the potion to Syria and hidden her instead, he could have rushed to Derek sooner, preventing unnecessary risks. Realizing the logic behind it, Ian can only groan, knowing he completely overlooked that option. Meanwhile, Syria lingers outside the temple, too nervous to enter. The sight of her waiting so anxiously only raises more questions for Ian. Before he can process it, Celine bursts into the room, throwing herself at him in a tight embrace. Her relief is evident, though it quickly turns into frustration. She scolds him for his recklessness, even biting his fingers in her usual dramatic fashion. Despite his injuries, Ian learns he's earned a reward, 70 gold, for taking down the magical beasts. However, Celine wastes no time suggesting they celebrate with a feast at a high-end restaurant specializing in rare magical beast dishes. Ian, barely able to move, finds the request ridiculous, but she insists, acting like he owes her for all the stress she endured. The playful banter doesn't last long, as emotions take over. Celine's voice softens, her embrace tightening as she admits how terrified she was of losing him. Ian, though surprised, reassures her with a gentle pat on the head. He might be reckless, but he isn't one to fall so easily. Still, Celine can't stand how he constantly throws himself into danger without hesitation. To her, he matters far more than Syria ever could. Ian, ever oblivious, doesn't fully grasp the depth of her words. To him, they've always been childhood friends, nothing more. Yet, from an outsider's view, this moment, this tension, could have easily shifted into something entirely different. Celine, overwhelmed with emotion, begs Ian to take better care of himself. She grips his hand tightly and leans in close, her face inches from his. Just as the moment intensifies, their friend suddenly appears, interrupting them. Celine jumps back in shock, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. Meanwhile, Ian is left feeling guilty. He has always seen Celine as a little sister, nothing more. Their friend, however, sees things differently. He points out that if Ian is serious about strengthening his bond with Syria, he should also consider how his actions affect Celine. Lately, Ian has been attracting a lot of attention, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. In fact, his presence alone has created a rift between Celine and Syria. From Syria's perspective, everything feels different now. Because of her mistake, someone else had to step in. Ian fought on her behalf and reminded her of what true friendship meant. When Derek carried him to the temple, she feared for his life, realizing that her actions had nearly cost him everything. In the past, she wouldn't have understood why someone would take such a risk for her. While reflecting, she finds her thoughts constantly interrupted by Ian's presence. He is the only one who has treated her kindly despite the trouble she brings. He never scolded her, never blamed her. Around him she feels safe, free to be herself. That's why she doesn't want to lose him. Now, she understands, even if only a little, what he must have felt while fighting to protect her. Determined, Sia decides to visit Ian at the temple. Shy and hesitant, she asks how he's feeling. He reassures her that he is recovering well, which instantly lifts her spirits. Ian is relieved to have company. He's been stuck reading a dull book Leto gave him to prepare for an upcoming exam. Seeing her guilt, he reminds her that there's no reason for him to be upset with her. She brightens at his words, a reaction that catches him off guard. Syria then hands him a small bag, explaining that it contains the reward money for defeating the magical beasts. Ian opens it, shocked to see so many gold coins. He immediately realizes that Syria must have added extra from her own pocket. Refusing to accept it, He insists that a person's life can't be repaid with gold. As she shyly reaches out, their hands briefly touch. Before the moment can settle, Selene suddenly appears. The mood shifts instantly. She glares at Syria before pushing past her, demanding an update on Ian's condition. Ian is taken aback by Selene's hostility, while Syria silently gets up, realizing it's best to leave. Selene, not holding back, coldly remarks that Syria is the reason Ian ended up in the temple in the first place. Ian snaps at her for being rude, but Selene brushes him off. Instead, she starts talking about where they should eat after his discharge. At that moment, Ian remembers Leto's warning. He tries to reason with Selene, but she doesn't seem to care. All that matters to her is spending time with him. Meanwhile, Syria leaves the temple feeling dejected. Her slumped posture doesn't go unnoticed by the other students. Many of them dislike her, seeing her as nothing more than an arrogant top student. Now, with rumors of her abandoning Ian spreading, some believe it's the perfect chance to bring her down. A few students consider taking action against her, but one of their seniors, Teen, warns them to be careful. Going against the Yordina family could have serious consequences. However, their conversation is interrupted by a mysterious woman who seems to know something about Syria's past. Removing her cloak, she reveals a shocking truth. Syria's birth is far more complicated than anyone realizes, and if what she says is true, there may be no reason to fear the Yordina family at all. Elsewhere, Ian visits Emma, who remains unconscious. He blames himself for ignoring the warnings from the letter. 2 predictions have already come true, which means the next danger, the magical beasts at the upcoming hunting festival, is almost certain to happen. The letter specifically mentioned the word monster, suggesting that the threat they face will be even greater than before. Frustrated, Ian knows he won't be able to handle this on his own. His only option is to seek help from his instructor. While deep in thought, he is interrupted by the Saintess, who is surprised to find him at Emma's bedside. He asks about Emma's condition and learns that, while she is still alive, there is no guarantee she will ever wake up. Ian recalls a past conversation with the Saintess. She once mentioned that Emma could be saved if a rare and valuable offering was made. He needs to know what she meant. She explains that an object with strong divine energy is required, typically the remains of a magical beast. However, such items are incredibly hard to obtain, even for her father. Ian wonders if the remains of a high-ranking magical beast would be enough, but she quickly clarifies that even that won't work. Only an adult specimen of a powerful species might be sufficient. This gives Ian some hope. The Saintess reassures him that Emma is on the verge of a miraculous recovery, so perhaps she will heal on her own. Leaving the conversation, Ian contemplates whether the monster he will encounter at the hunting festival might be strong enough to serve as an offering, but that possibility brings another issue. He barely survived his last fight. He knows he won't stand a chance unless his professor steps in.